'Cause I'll be your friend, an ear I'll lend. I'll tell you time and time again, it's true.
Welcome back to our cosy, comfy corner of the world. I'm Amy, and whether you've been with us from the beginning or if you're joining us for the first time today, we're so glad you're here. Last time, we explored what it means to hold on to the good stories our children can't yet see, to keep their stories safe when they're stuck remembering only what went wrong. Today, I want to take us somewhere that follows on from that. And I'd like to be honest from the start. This is territory where I'm wondering alongside you, not offering answers. I was sitting with a child recently who found it impossible to say anything kind about themselves. Every suggestion I offered was met with resistance. Finally, they said something that stayed with me. It feels boastful to say good things about myself. The unkind things, they feel more honest. Some children get stuck in this place where kindness towards themselves feels like lying and harshness feels like truth. And I've been wondering what's happening in those moments. Is it possible for that to shift? And if so, how? I'm delighted that family therapist Denise Bevan is with us again today. Together we're going to explore when and how those shifts might happen and when they might not. Denise, it's lovely to see you. So last time we sat with this wondering, I don't think I'm good at anything. I only remember the times I messed up. In our family podcast, Worry Wizard Wonderings, Sonny explores this same struggle. And at some point in his journey, he begins to notice something, that he's telling himself a story. That realization doesn't fix everything, but it opens something, a small space where things might be different. Denise, I'm curious about this developmental moment. I wanted to explore with you, when do children begin to understand that thoughts are thoughts and not necessarily fact, that there's some distance between I think I'm no good and I am no good. But just before we go into that, I wanted to hold something important, that this awareness that we're exploring, it's not something that all children develop in the same way at the same time. And for some children, it never becomes their main way of navigating difficulty. And that this isn't a problem to fix, but it just tells us something about that particular child's needs. So yeah, I wanted to go back to this is a developmental moment and look at when do children begin to understand that thoughts are thoughts and not necessarily facts.
So our thoughts, so understanding about our thoughts, that they're not necessarily us, that awareness, it's like a gradual development, and it sort of relates to the development of the concept of self, which means who are we, understanding ourselves. And of course, that's a lifelong process. Who are we? And but around mid sort of childhood, 7 or 8, children begin to get a deeper understanding of that. So they begin to understand their own minds, and they also get a sense of others' minds. So perhaps you'll notice that they don't have that sort of concrete thinking that perhaps, when they're sort of 3, 4, 5, children have this sort of very concrete way of seeing the world, like, the chair has hurt them, sort of thing. And we can say, naughty chair, but they develop this sort of deeper understanding. And you may see at that age that sort of magical thinking starts to disappear as well. So, they start to question things about the Tooth Fairy and Father Christmas and things like that. They're just the beginnings. But of course, that varies from child to child. And there's nothing certain here. But I think it's useful to get an awareness that they're beginning to to understand and become aware of their thinking. But it is a process that comes and goes. So you may see that perhaps in times of stress or difficulties, transitions, they may regress a little bit.
And so in that, you're talking about a capacity. I was thinking about the idea of capacity versus skill. So skill being like something like learning to ride a bike, but you talking about capacity. You know, in our work, you meet different children at different ages and stages, and different things emerge or don't emerge at different times, which tells you more about that picture. And in this space, I suppose we don't have space to look at the complexities of that, but we're just kind of touching on it as an idea.
Yes, yeah. It's for us perhaps to have this awareness and listen out for it, I guess.
Lovely, thank you. And I suppose connected to that, which is bigger than this, is the difference between a child only being able to hold on to difficult parts of the day and a child actually sharing with you something that was difficult and that needs to be attended to for them. Okay. So in Worry Wizard Wonderings, in the story, Sonny discovers something that helps him. He realizes that when he says, I can't believe in myself, when he adds the word yet, I don't believe in myself yet. For Sonny, this opens up breathing room. It feels like a promise to his future self that change is possible. And in exploring that idea, as when you sit with any child, some things hold for them, some things for Sonny and the character in the story, it opened up something, a space that felt hopeful. But it doesn't work for every child. Some children hear yet and it creates hope, but some hear it and it creates pressure. Some hear it as dismissal. You're not hearing how hard it is for me right now, and you're trying to nudge me into something else. And I'm here, and I want you to sit with me here. And I just wondered if we could just sit with that for a little bit, Denise, the idea that yet lands for some children and not for others.
Yeah. I think for some children, they're open to possibilities, open to positive comments. Maybe not all the time. It depends where they are on that day, doesn't it? And we all know that if we've had a difficult day, we can't. It's hard to get past that. So if a child rejects that offering, again, I think it's that slowing it down. Observing. Validating how they're feeling, and it's back to that power of empathy, and using everything that you've got as a parent to check in. What's their face doing, what's their body doing, what's their body language doing, and I think slow it down, and perhaps at that point, all they need really is that validation of perhaps where they're feeling, what you're seeing, and before you can offer any more. And it might be that for that day, that's enough.
Yeah. There's something about really close sensing, isn't there, in that? And I suppose one of the things that you've talked about is where the parent's at in that. So the parent might be desperate to open the hope up for the child, because actually sitting with them in where they are is so painful. But actually not sitting with them where they are might, for the child, feel like they're not holding space for what how they're experiencing things.
Yeah, it's too much of a leap.
Yes.
So there's something about a bridge, but maybe just the beginning of the bridge that you're laying down, and it might be that you don't really know when you're going to get across that, but being at the beginning of it is enough.
Yes. Yeah. I suppose another way of using yet perhaps is to model it in your own life. So, if you were sharing something with your child that you haven't been able to do yet, you can model that you're creating space for yourself, and you're modeling the idea that you're not stuck, that you have this hope that you will return to something, and perhaps whatever is difficult in that might change for you in that.
Yeah. So I think it's a sort of that process of soothing a child, recognizing, but then that offering too. And that's a really careful balance. And sometimes we'll get it wrong, won't we?
I hear though that your focus in it is on the noticing what's creating space here for this child and what's creating pressure. How do I notice that, and then how do I attend to it?
Yes.
Lovely. Okay.
It's all about that attunement, isn't it? That word, that lovely word, I love it, attunement. And how in tune you are with your loved one, with your child.
I'm just thinking about how easy that would be on some days and how more difficult on others.
Oh wow, if you've got a million things to do and you're on a deadline, that's tricky, isn't it? Yeah.
I've put here about something that we can all struggle with is we often hold a view of our child that's full of their strengths, their kindness, their capabilities, but they might hold a very different story, one that says, I always mess up, I'm no good at anything. And we want them to see what we see, but we don't want to dismiss what they're genuinely experiencing. How do you hold, I'd like to give you the simple questions, Denise. How do you hold both truths at once, ours and theirs?
Yes, I think as a parent, we have this sort of deep wonderment for them, don't we? This sort of absolute love and faith in them, and because we've seen how they've developed, and we can see all the wonderful things that they are. But they're exposed to other things, aren't they? That maybe challenge their view of themselves, and I think we need to be mindful of that. And whilst we can hold that truth for them, we also need to be in their space too, to validate that it's hard.
I love the idea of holding both truths at once. I think one of the things, particularly, it feels like a really current thing, the idea that we're driving towards singular truths and struggling to hold the idea that more than one thing can be true at once. And I think in holding our children, it's really important, because sometimes we can feel more comfortable if we present certainty to a child. But you think about this, that it's not about convincing your child. How do you hold space for, you have your story and I have mine, and both can exist at once.
Yeah. And children will say, and they've said to me, my in my family, they've sort of said, well, you just think I'm great anyway, don't you? No matter what, you would just think I'm great. And there's a little bit of anger there, and and what would you know, sort of thing. But underneath that, there's something inside that they know that I think they're great.
This lovely secure base from which they move from. And just thinking about, sometimes the stories our children hold aren't just their own, they're stories that have been handed down. You mentioned, maybe school or friendships. Even from us as their key grown-ups, if I'm constantly saying I'm rubbish at technology, or I'm so daft, then my children are learning from that too. And I just wondered, Denise, if you could say a little bit about that, about family narratives that children might become part of.
Yeah. I think it's difficult to be aware, isn't it, of what we say. But, we all do it, and we all develop stories about ourselves, our strengths, but our difficulties. And generally you speak about your difficulties more often, don't you, than the positive stories. And I think, that's very much about yourself. I will say I'm absolutely useless at maths and always hated maths, and that's a story. But also I think families can have those stories as well. We're not an arty family, we're not a musical family. And what does that do to a child when they're perhaps exposed to opportunities? Does it shut them down? So I think we can be aware of that, and we can model that a little bit differently, to perhaps even just sort of something you've cooked really well. I'm proud of that. I've made a nice meal and I've done it all right this time. I think that sort of modelling and creating that language around it is useful, and it can just be sort of a daily habit, and we can look at that ourselves, can't we, about those daily habits, and appreciate ourselves and appreciate others.
I think it's lovely to pause and think about the fact that children aren't individuals. They exist in lots of different systems, and one of them is the family system, and obviously so the school system and their community, and I suppose what we're talking about here is simply noticing. It's not about rushing to rewrite or change, but there's something about what you're saying which is hearing. So you speak and then you hear, and then you get curious about what might that sound like.
Yeah, it's raising the awareness, isn't it? And that's a constant, isn't it? Of reflecting. What was I just saying there? And most of the time we're on autopilot, aren't we? We're not really aware of our thinking, and I think making that effort to become aware of that, stepping into awareness, that takes practice.
Lovely. Thank you, Denise. As always, I'd like to pause here. You know your child in ways that these short episodes never could. You hold their pace, their story, their context. And if your child struggles with how they see themselves, feels persistent and painful, reaching out to a trusted professional can be a helpful next step. What we're offering here are gentle wonderings, not solutions, the deep knowing of your child that belongs to you. If it feels right this week, you might gently notice the stories you tell yourself when things are difficult, not to change them, just to notice. What do you say to yourself when you make a mistake, when something's hard? Our children might be listening to how we hold ourselves in difficulty. Maybe you notice you say, I'm such an idiot when you spill something, or terrible at remembering things when you forget an appointment. It's just about noticing, not judging, just awareness that these stories are there and your children are learning from them. These chats are just beginnings. If you'd like to explore more, you'll find 2 other Worry Wizard podcasts inside In This Together, A Year with the Worry Wizard. One is Worry Wizard Wonderings, a co-listen for you and your child at bedtime, creating gentle moments of connection. And the other is Wondering Together, just for grown-ups, so you feel confident holding what might emerge. Together, they're here to walk alongside you in the everyday ups and downs, the wobbly mornings, the tricky bedtimes, and everything in between. Thank you for chatting with me today, Denise.
You're welcome.
For those listening, I know how hard it feels when your child is stuck in a painful story about themselves, when kindness feels like boasting and harshness feels like honesty. And sometimes the story isn't distorted at all, it's accurate information about struggle, which means the support they need is different, not that they're wrong. Your work isn't to convince your child they're wonderful, it's to witness them fully in difficulty and in strength, and to model honesty and compassion in all your own self-stories. I'll be honest, I still find this difficult. I still catch myself being harsh when I make mistakes. I still struggle to hold my own good stories, but I'm learning and I'm trying. And maybe the honesty and willingness to be imperfect and keep trying, maybe that's what offers our children a helpful mirror. I'm sending you wellbeing wishes from me, Amy, the Worry Wizard.
When you're feeling scared like nobody cares, I hope that you know that I will always be there for you. I'm here for you. And tell me what you're thinking, 'cause I want to know. When your heart is sinking, I'll be there to show with proof. I'm here for you. 'Cause I'll be your friend, an ear I'll lend. I'll tell you time and time again, it's true.